joining us now live here at the Wells Fargo Arena. He's on Talk Radio Row, which is like he's mingling with the common folk rather than be upstairs in the nice suite of CNN with the coffee and the bagels, and they take you up on an elevator. He's down here with the AAM radio bottom feeders, Scott Paul. Scott, thanks for joining the common folk down here on Radio Row.
I feel right at home with the bottom feeders, John, I have to tell you. Donuts and coffee, that's my kind of breakfast.
I mean, look at the difference. This is why I love what I do on Talk Radio, because you get real people. Like, look at the people that, we're all sandwiched in here now. Then you look at your nice suite in CNN. We got the nice air-conditioned tent, and you go up on an elevator, and they put a makeup on you, and there's my friend, Scotty. Now, who's up there, but they live in a bubble, see. We, on the other hand, we're down, we're like one step from inside the Bernie Sanders wall in
the tent.
Inside the tent. I got to send this picture out from Jessica, a picture of Bernie Sanders' tent city. But actually, those tents look pretty nice. They were like high-end tents. Right? Not like what I expected, right? Would be some kind of thing. All right, Scott, now, day 3 of the convention, all of a sudden, all these corporatist Democrats, all of a sudden, they're seeing the light on TPP. Tim Kaine, who's from Virginia, as you know, who I've had on my show, 10,000 times or something. I've debated him on trade for 50 times. He comes to the convention and changes his position. Like, do you think he was coming to Philadelphia and he said, you know what, Fredericks is right? What do you think happened?
Yeah, I think you were the one who persuaded him. There's no question in my mind. Between the time he got was considered by Hillary, he checked in with you and he said, you know what, I'm going to be against TPP. I'm confident that's exactly how it went down. You just tell me if I'm wrong. But I think that the awakening, and I know we've had this conversation before within the Republican Party, and how there has always been a gap between the voters and the establishment. Always been a gap, and it's been quite a wide gap. And this year, you have this issue has overtaken. I mean, it's lapped everything. It is out there. Democrats, Republicans, independents, they want trade policy change. They don't want the TPP. They want factory jobs. And, there's variations of this vision, but it's strong. And I think, look, smart politicians, and I never want to criticize someone who changes his or her mind, because I think that shows I'm looking objectively at the facts. I see them, and the facts point me in this direction. I think that's much better than like having this philosophy, like Adam Smith's invisible hand always rules, and then no matter what you're doing, you view the world through that construct. We live in reality. We don't live in a theory. We live in reality, and you know this. And I think that's a reflection. I mean, the most visible signs in the arena last night, other than longer together, all these great messages, yes, we can, were kind of the homegrown anti-TPP signs. And I saw them all around. And the crowd was pretty polite last night.
Yes.
To the speakers.
They were polite.
Like
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
No, that's right. They weren't polite to Leon Panetta necessarily. So, but
no more wars.
Yeah, no more wars. Right. But on the, this has become, this has become a hot button issue, and it'll be interesting to see. And this is the thing. I do not know. Does Hillary raise the TPP tonight? Does she raise and try to get some space from her, between her and where Obama is?
Well,
on
she
this.
Was
it'll be
against
interesting
it
to see.
before she was for it, or for it before she was against it, or Bernie was against it and Bernie was beating her, so now she's for it or against it or something like that.
Yeah, well, she came out against it last fall. So this has not been this hasn't been
Scott,
a.
Look, she has been. She was one of the architects of this. I mean, she came out. She made a political decision based on the fact that Sanders was hammering her on it.
Right.
I mean, do you really believe? If
Look,
she's
I will
president,
say I knew her when she was the senator from New York, and I will say that when you go to upstate New York and you see it's like a variation of Southside Virginia, Southwest Virginia, right? You see that, and it has an impact on you, and she doesn't have a perfect record on this. I mean, Donald Trump has no record on this, and this is going to be the interesting challenge. Is that on the one hand you have a candidate, Donald Trump, who talks about this every day. Who wants a different trade policy, a vastly different one. He has literally no record on it, and his business record isn't a great one. Let's be honest about it. I mean, a lot of outsourcing of his products overseas. Okay. On the other hand, you have a candidate who's talking about the TPP, who has cast votes on trade, who has cast some votes for free trade agreements. Has cast other votes against free trade agreements. She has a mixed record, like a lot of members of Congress do. She's against TPP. And so I think voters are going to have to weigh, what's the, you got this business guy who says he's stuff. You have Hillary, who's against it, but she's voted for some of this, voted against some of this, and even with Tim Kaine having this
epiphany.
I don't want. Yeah, if epiphany conversion. Maybe he had the time to read it, John. I doubt if a lot of people have read the TPP.
Yeah, it's 90,000 pages.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
You only get 16 minutes to read.
That's right. It's not. Yeah, it's tough. But you know who didn't do Hillary any favors was Terry McAuliffe when he was speaking earlier in the week.
It was favor of it.
Yeah, and he was like, "Look, I'm confident that she's going to come around and be for TPP."
Well, of course, she
and
is.
then he walked that back faster than
Scott,
anything I've ever seen.
Okay, Scott, look, that was great CNN spin. I mean, it was so good that you can get out of the common folk AM radio area and you can go up on the nice air-conditioned elevator.
Thanks, I think, John.
You get all that stuff because that was a great spin. Clinton, she was the architect of TPP. She helped negotiate it. She only came out against it because she had to, because Sanders was putting pressure on her. And what McAuliffe, who's her best friend, basically smoked the whole thing out and said, don't worry about it. She'll get to be president. Here's what she'll do. She'll say, I got to renegotiate it, and she'll change 5 lines, and it's all going to be fine. I mean, that's exactly what's going to happen. As far as Trump is concerned, you can say he has no record. But, Scott, I call it like I see it. I've been fighting these trade deals. I fought NAFTA with Donald Trump 30 years ago. Okay, so he's been very consistent on this stuff. And back when we were fighting NAFTA, there were only 3 Republicans in the galaxy that were opposed to NAFTA. Me, Trump, and Pat Buchanan. That's it. So he has a very long track record on it. But the problem is
his business record on it is not great.
That's
right?
what makes him the only candidate in my mind, Scott, who can really fix it. Because he knows how to game the system. He knows how it's gamed. He knows how it's played. As a businessman, he knew how to take advantage of every EB-5, EB-1 cheap labor outsource. He figured it all out to maximize his profit at the expense of American workers. It's only the guy that was inside gaming the system that is going to be able to fix it, in my judgment, because he understands it.
That's an interesting take, I think. When he's had the chance to put his money where his mouth is.
Why would he do that?
He
was
hadn't
in business
done it. Yeah,
to
but
make
look,
money. So he took advantage of the stupid rules we have.
I'm wearing pants today that are lovely pants that were made right across the river in New Jersey from the Trump Tower. Yesterday, I was wearing a tie, a Brooks Brothers tie, that was made in Long Island City, which you can probably see from the Trump Tower. So it doesn't take a genius to make clothes in America if that's part of your brand. And all I'm saying, it hasn't been part of his brand. I mean, it's part of his rhetoric. And so you got to decide. He has, was he engaged in TPP 3 years ago when it was being negotiated? I'm not sure that he was.
I'm not sure that anybody was,
I don't think
because nobody knew what the hell it was. I
Yeah.
mean, you couldn't even read the thing.
Yeah, and look,
But you can't argue that
politicians-
he was on the forefront of fighting NAFTA, and he fought the Republicans on that.
Yeah, and Hillary was a good soldier. I mean, you got to be in an administration. Is it from a foreign policy perspective? Does it make sense to try to isolate China? Absolutely, it makes sense to try to isolate China. Is TPP the way to do that? No, I don't think it is. I think you got to take on China on trade directly.
Right.
I think that's what you got to do. You got to push back directly on that. So there's a lot of questions to be answered, and I hope the voters put both of them on the spot as we move
bet
forward.
she doesn't address it tonight. I don't think she'll just flub over.
We ought to do a gentleman's bet. I think that she at least makes a reference to it.
She can make a reference. It'll never go beyond that, because in her soul and heart, she doesn't really believe in this stuff. And you got to remember, Scott Paul, you got to follow the money. And this whole thing, all this open border and all these trade deals, this is funded by the globalist slave trade network. I've told you this over and over. They search the globe for slave labor in order to reduce their cost of production. They take the money they save and they funnel it back into political action committees and campaigns, and so they get the money. I mean, I'm going to Milwaukee next week. You know why? I think the guy that's running against Paul Ryan has a shot to beat him. Okay, and Paul Ryan is the poster child of open borders, free, cheap labor coming in, EB-5 visas, ship him in, TPP, NAFTA. He's the poster child of that.
He came out of the Jack Kemp school, and Jack Kemp's great on a lot of things, but on the
horrible on that.
On that he's not so good.
It's because it becomes ideological mumbo-jumbo right-wing pablum. And look, I'm a conservative, but I don't take what comes out of the Heritage Foundation and these other right-wing or left-wing think tanks, both of them funded by the donor class for an agenda. Paul Ryan has never had a legitimate job in his life, right? He was an intern on Capitol Hill, and then he went to work for the Heritage Foundation, and that's funded by the slave traders, and it goes on and on and on. The guy's never met a payroll, never had a job, and now he's like the Speaker of the House. I mean, that's until you get these people out of there, you're not going to fix this problem, and you know that.
There's got to be change. Again, I think the smart politicians are finally picking up on it. Some of them have always been there, like Bernie, always there, right? I mean, he's always been in that camp. The others are catching on. I mean, some like to ride on the wave. What they do after the election, you're right. It's an open question, which is why we're out there talking to Democrats, Republicans, independents, saying you got to hold these candidates accountable. It's not, go cast your vote, but there's also work to do after Election Day, because I have heard a lot of promises made during elections about we're going to do this Obama promised 1 million manufacturing jobs in 2012. I would have loved to seen that, but we're only a little over a third of the way there. Mitt Romney said he was going to name China a currency manipulator on day one. Did I believe that? I was like, I'm not so sure. So you get these promises that escalate, closer to Election Day. The thing is holding them accountable and making sure, and it takes leadership. So, Trump said he's going to be a leader on this. He says he's going to be a leader on this. The problem is he doesn't have that. Again, he doesn't have that business track record. Hillary says she's going to be a leader on this and bringing manufacturing jobs back. She's going to be on this bus tour with Tim Kaine going through Pennsylvania and Ohio, talking to the voters that I know you connect with very well, John. And she's going to try to persuade them that she's going to do a lot for jobs in her first 100 days. So it's going to be up to you, up to me to get these folks engaged.
There's not a dime's worth of difference between all of these TPP people, and they can come out now and say they're opposed to it for political reasons, but McAuliffe nailed it. What McAuliffe said is, it's just campaign rhetoric. At the end of the day, you know what? When the slave trade globalist network need Hillary Clinton and they got a check in her hand, she'll be right there.
Yes.
Scott, we're out of time. We have a gentleman's bet. I will win. We want to thank Scott Paul for being with us. He is with the Alliance for American Manufacturing, keeping America strong. Scott, thanks for being with us.
John, always a pleasure.